big thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring this week's video.
In this video, I'm going to talk all about one of the most important skills in landscape photography, and that is predicting the weather. I'm here with Tom, who's an amazing landscape photographer and expert in weather. Make sure you stay to the end of the video because Tom's going to share something all about fire skies and how to predict fire skies, and I think that's one of the things we all want as landscape photographers. So this is Tom, and he is the world expert on weather. Well, you're not really, are you? But
not quite.
But anyway, Tom, how did you get into, like, well, first landscape photography, but also, you know, understanding a little bit more about the weather? Because you're the person that I'll always go to if I'm thinking about, you know, weather. Yeah. I think I know a lot about the weather, but, you know, you've really taken a keen interest, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, to answer your first question, I guess landscape photography, it was a difficult one because it was over actually quite many years. It was just sort of an incremental approach. I sort of picked up a camera, thought that's interesting, and it sort of spiraled from there. And it wasn't until, say, maybe 4 or 5 years ago that actually I started getting a little bit addicted. Yeah. And I use that word because I'm always on my phone looking at the forecast, addicted to the weather, understanding how it actually develops, and actually when we're out places like this, witnessing how incredible it actually is. And I always think to myself, people think I'm mad and people will think you're mad. Why do we get up at stupid o'clock in the morning and do the things we do? And half the time, I just don't think they understand it. Yeah. And that's sort of, you know, when this valley behind us filled with mist,
there's
it's
a
incredible.
buzz, isn't there?
There's a buzz, and people don't understand it because most people are fast asleep. I mean, it's 6 a.m. now, but in the middle of summer, it's 4 a.m. We could be up or even earlier. And people just don't get it. But once you witness it, you can't help but then have that addiction to see more and more.
No, I think that's the same for everybody, isn't it? That it's just that it's a bit of an addictive drug, isn't it, almost, landscape photography. And a lot of that is to do with the weather, though, isn't it? It is to do with trying to chase those conditions a little bit. Yeah. You know, often I hear us landscape photographers say we're just weather photographers, which is an argument against that. But you know, we do chase weather. So why did you get more into the weather? Was that just a need to just want to go and try and find out how to get the best conditions? And
I think once I'd sort of got the basics of photography and I was sort of finding myself searching for those sort of compositions that sort of really stood out, I thought, well, what's actually going to make this better? Yeah. Light, weather conditions, all the other kind of things that you talk about in all your videos. And, you know, example here, if this was filled with fog and mist, or we had an epic sky up above, or all those kind of things just make it stand out. And it also gives me something individual that makes my photos unique to somebody else's, rather than just bog standard midday photography on top of mantle or Winnats Pass or whatever.
It also tells a good story as well, doesn't it? Because I think photography nowadays isn't just about the image, it's about the story of getting to that image as well. And it's quite a nice story to show how you've done that sometimes on Instagram or whatever.
This is it, and I think as well, just having an image, as great as they are, having that sort of bit of behind the scenes or videos of it, and I think people can relate to that. And people don't necessarily just have to be photographers. I think hikers quite like it as well. They're addicted to the same addiction, chasing these forecasts. And I think it's important for us as landscape photographers just to have something that backs up our images as well and tells that story.
Cool. Okay, so it doesn't look like we've got the conditions of an inversion today, and I was a little bit dubious because for me, I looked at it and there was a little bit more wind than I thought might give us an inversion. But we were just chatting back there. I was just speaking to Tom back there, and you were saying something different, so we'll talk about that in a minute. So we're going to talk about some of the tips that you can use to get the best conditions to get the best photos. So we're going to go around here, see if we can get in a better position for when the sun rises, although we've got a bank of cloud coming in now as well, haven't we? Great. We had a little bit of an audience going past there. I'll just show you these sheep that have just been watching us.
A little bit distracted.
So one of the advantages of having somebody with you is you have a model as well. And one of the things here in the Peak District is, it's called the Peak District, I say this often, but there's not that many peaks sticking above the horizon, but by just having Tom up there, I think it just gives a little bit of a nice silhouette, and also the clouds are quite nice at the moment because the sun's just rising behind those clouds over there and lighting them up, so I think it looks okay. It's not the best photo in the world, but one of the things that I always do when I come to a place like this, if the conditions aren't exactly what I want, is I'm scouting, I'm looking for new things to shoot next time I come. Yeah, so got Tom. I'll just take another quick one. So I think if we just head down to that barn, I'd quite like to sort of scout it out a little bit. So what apps do you use, or app is the main app that you use when you're sort of looking at the weather?
Yeah, there's two really. I think one of my favourite ones is Ventasky.
Yeah.
The advantage of Ventasky, it gives you a visual representation of a larger area. In fact, you have essentially you can look at the whole world if you wanted to. But that gives me an idea of sort of the different parameters, different data that we can look at in a sort of more larger region, so the whole of the Peak District. The other app I like to use is Clear Outside, and that just gives you more of a specific location and gives you all the tabulated data in one view. So there's advantages of switching between the two, but ultimately they do just represent the same data, but in different manners. Yeah,
there's so many different apps out there, isn't there? And I love those two as well. And I switch between Windy and Ventasky, which I'm not sure if they've got the same data or not, but they just present it in a similar way, don't they?
Windy's very similar,
Yeah. So good. Well, that's good. Let's go and see if we can find that hut. Is it over? Where is it?
Just over this way, yeah.
Okay. Oh, so I've just shot this. It was the sun was a little bit better before. It was just behind these low clouds here. They're moving quite quickly, actually, aren't they?
It's coming in quite quick since sunrise, isn't it?
Yeah. So clouds are a really interesting thing in weather, I think, because understanding clouds and the clouds to look for, I think, is a good indicator. I usually look for low clouds. I think that's good. I always find that if I have like low clouds and no medium and high clouds, then I'm going to get more excited about it. You know, what do you think? Why is that? What anything you can add to clouds?
I think low clouds sort of generally up to sort of 6,000 feet, and I find they're sort of better for sort of bit of drama, bit of mood, atmosphere, particularly if, I mean, I'm from the Lake District, particularly where we're in mountains. You've got that added drama to your images. And if you can get sort of that burst of light at sunrise and sunset, you've got the mood of the cloud above you and a bit of light to just contrast that. But I think the flip side of that is as we go up is medium cloud, which is above 6,000 feet up to like 20,000 feet. And that can be good as well. I find those best for fire skies because they're sort of mid-level. You're more likely to catch the sun beaming through at sunrise and sunset, hitting and lighting up the underside of those clouds. As you go higher again, so high clouds above 20,000 feet, and you're going up to beyond sort of the level planes fly, and those clouds are sort of generally made from like super cooled water droplets, which tend to be a lot wispier. Imagine when you see plane trails in the sky, they're quite wispy and thin, and for photos, I find them a little bit distracting, those clouds, because they're more sort of erratic and random, and you know, I prefer a blanket of cloud, which you don't generally get the same.
No, and also if you get high cloud that is just 100%, then it's just white, flat light, isn't it, as well? It can look really horrible.
It's something, you get the two extremes, and it's finding the balance, and it's not black and white, there's no set rules to it. It's whatever it is
But would you say that 100% low cloud is probably better than the 100% high cloud? Because 100% low cloud, you've got a chance of a little bit of light coming through, haven't you?
I think the thing for landscape photographers, we have to have adaptability, and I think there's things we can do with each of those. And it's not a black and white rule. It's knowing where we are and what we can shoot and what options we have, which is why it's important, I think, to make sure we understand the weather and understand what we can do with different cloud bases, because it entirely changes what you might actually go out and shoot.
Yeah, sure. So to summarise really then, low cloud is, it's going to be good for drama. You might get more light coming through the cloud. And high cloud is probably usually not going to be as good. But medium cloud is going to be good for fire skies, which we'll get onto. You know, we'll talk about that in a bit.
The only one on high cloud, and people can Google this, is if you search for mackerel sky, which is known as being a great one actually for fire skies, which is probably the only one I would want to go and shoot with it. But again, it's about having enough of it.
Okay, cool. That's good. Right, we're nearly at the barn. It's just over there. I've not shot that before, but I'm really interested to go and have a look at it.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, let's keep going. Okay, Tom, this is scene of one of your amazing photos, many of your amazing photos. Yeah. The only photo you've taken that's of any good. No, so there was a hailstorm here, and it looked pretty epic. I mean, it is a fantastic shot here. I've never photographed here before, and I'm definitely going to come back. It's nice to just come and scout it a little bit. But it was a storm. So storms and things, what do you look for in the weather and on, maybe, venture sky or anything if you're looking for a storm?
I think the particular time of year I photographed this, April is actually known for having more epic hailstorms.
Okay,
Without going into detail of why general they are.
Okay.
So sort of that sort of time of year which we're in now, I'm sort of eyeballing the weather. So generally I'll be looking at maybe even just the Met Office, because it's quite easy with things like hail. It shows it on the forecast. There's a symbol for it. We know it's going to happen. Yeah. Then I might sort of delve into greater detail looking at apps like Clear Outside or Venter Sky, particularly here because we're in quite a large vista. Yeah. What I envisaged in my head beforehand was the hail swooping across the scene. Yeah. I know at some point I'm going to get pelted by hail. It's impossible to know where it's going to land exactly. But I knew looking at Venter Sky that day, I knew the prevailing wind direction actually was coming from the east. So I was thinking that hailstorm's going to blow across. Yeah. So I can either get it coming into the scene or just after the scene. Yeah. Fortunately, it actually passed behind the scene. I got obviously a bit pelted by hail, but it passed over Mamtor in the background and actually was perfect because I actually had as well in the background over here a little bit of soft light breaking through the cloud. So I could also look at the cloud layers. We had quite a bit of low cloud, but actually there was a few breaks in it over towards the south, over that way. Yeah. And that actually gave me a little bit of nice light as well as the mood of the cloud above and the hail swooping in behind. So it was perfect concoction of...
So on Venture Sky, you're looking at things like the radar, the local radar at the time, seeing how that's changing. Yeah. And then maybe just the cloud and if there's any breaks in cloud.
I also use an app called Rain Today, which actually does show hail as well. Sure. And that's perfect for sort of anything up to an hour. Because I had no idea study here for the entire afternoon I was here, knowing when it's going to come in, and that just gives you that extra bit of assurance of knowing when it's about to hit and making sure you've got your composition ready.
Perfect, that's good. Well, we'll show the photo, we've probably already showed it, and I don't think I'm going to get a great shot today, but it's good to come and scout this out.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay, so I've got a shot here. There's a little bit more room on the top and bottom. It's just for just record really of what's here, but I quite like this barn and the tree going into the distance. I feel like the cloud, a darker cloud would be better behind it, which is what Tom got in his shot. But I really like this rock as well. It's got a little bit of frost on it at the moment, which looks really nice. If the conditions were good, I think I'd probably wait and see how the sheep are moving, see if I could get a sheep in the scene. Like this sheep's walking through here, because I think that might add something to the shot. But yeah, I think it's a fairly simple 24mm shot. This looks fairly good. So you just mentioned wind there coming from the east. I mean, for me, I think wind's really important and something that I look in the weather all the time. When I was in Harris, I was looking at the wind direction all the time. I mean, it dictates the images I'm going to get as well. So for instance, I was looking at if it was an offshore wind, because then that was pushing the wind against the breaking waves and creating a nice spray, or if I was thinking about doing a longer exposure and I wanted any cloud movement, then having the wind coming directly towards me was really important.
Yeah, I agree, yeah.
But you were mentioning something to me just before that you think of wind bringing different weather systems into the UK as well.
I think it's important for us to have sort of a wider understanding of how our weather's impacted globally, if anything. But I mean, in the UK, our prevailing wind direction's westerly, so coming to the east. But again, in the UK, we generally borrow our weather from everywhere else. Yeah. So we have sort of a battle for supremacy almost of sort of 5 key air masses, and that dictates whether they're coming over the land or the sea or from polar regions or tropical regions. Yeah. And it's important to understand that, because we might get hot or cold air or combinations of dry or wet air or humid air, and that dictates why we might have cloud diversion, mist or fog, or some mornings we might come out and have absolutely nothing. And it's all dependent on where our winds are coming from.
So you mentioned cloud inversion there. Where would you expect the wind to come from, or what would you be looking? Because we didn't get a cloud inversion this morning. We'll talk about that in a second. But what would you think would increase the humidity, for instance, to help that cloud inversion?
Essentially, like I say, our wind is westerly, so coming from out of the Atlantic.
Yeah.
And that's going to bring sort of
A
that
lot of moisture
with it.
Yeah.
And if anything, actually, wind is important to inversion, and we'll get onto this in more detail shortly, is because it actually can supply humidity or moisture into the area you're in, and that's why actually a little bit of wind sometimes can actually amplify.
Okay.
inversion
Yeah, I didn't think about that. Well, we can get onto that now, I suppose. So an inversion is something that all landscape photographers want.
Everyone wants it.
I know that a lot of people in certain places, certainly in America, they don't get many inversions. So, on the west coast of America, there certainly are, but in the central regions, there aren't a huge amount of inversions. But we're lucky in the UK, we get quite a lot of inversions, especially here. This is probably the most common spot for inversions, just behind us. What are the key things to look for an inversion?
I think there's what people think there is, and that's clear skies and cold nights.
Yeah.
And that's not wrong. People are right, but there's a lot more going on there.
Yeah, certainly what I look for.
And it's a cracking starting point.
Yeah.
That's one of the key things we need. I think that we need to understand why that's important. And clear skies are important because actually what you want is the ground to cool rapidly overnight. And what that does is it cools the air above it, and this is why inversions form in valleys, because all that cold air is coming off the hills and collecting at the bottom of the valley. And what happens as air cools is its density increases and the amount of moisture it can hold reduces.
Okay.
So that humid air is essentially the moisture's being squeezed out of it, and it's going to form your dew, your frost, and your mist, and your fog.
Yeah, so it's more about that temperature profile that's created that's important.
Yeah.
And that's, you were saying before, that's why you think we didn't get it today, that you thought that there wasn't such a change in temperature through the air.
I think because I was driving in this morning, I was thinking, I don't think it's going to happen. And I couldn't quite figure out why, but then it occurred to me, yesterday was a cold, clear day. So I don't think the ground was cold enough, and the air above it was already cold.
Yeah.
So that temperature drop didn't occur, which as a result didn't force that moisture out of there, even though it was humid, because if you looked at this morning, it looked textbook.
Yeah.
But because of what happened yesterday, it didn't allow the profile to occur.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, that's really useful. Right, on to probably what everybody wants to get, and that's those amazing fire skies where the clouds light up. What do you look for that?
For me, I think the best fire skies are medium cloud.
Okay.
And you can quite easily see that on Venta Sky or Clear Outside. You've got the 3 bands. It's quite easy to see. For me, with fire skies, I'm looking for a blanket of medium cloud. You can get them with high cloud, low cloud. I'd try and avoid that. And the reason is the fire skies occur when you get the underlighting from the sun.
Yeah.
And low cloud is very, very close to the ground, and there's less area for the sun to underlight.
Yeah.
So we're talking medium and high cloud.
Yeah.
Medium generally the best, I find. So you want a blanket, so you're looking ideally around sort of 90 up to 100% medium cloud.
Yeah.
But none of that's going to work if you don't have the sun on the horizon that's able to light that up.
Yeah, so you want that 100%, 90% medium cloud at the point where you're taking the photograph. And behind
you, or within the image, I
guess.
guess.
Within the image of the photograph. But then you're looking for a gap, I presume, or that cloud to end at a point.
Exactly. So one of the things I do is I look at, and I use Venta Sky to do this, is look at, is there going to be any breaks in that medium cloud?
Yeah.
And then you need to understand is where my horizon actually is.
Yeah.
And there are tools to do that. You can type in horizon calculator on Google and it brings up an assortment of methods. But what I generally try and do is understand how far the horizon is from me at that point. And it does get, this is where it gets a little bit more complicated and you have to put a little bit of legwork in, is understanding what elevation we're at. So have a look on an OS map. Here, where we're now at Cowler Barn, we're about 420 metres above sea level, which actually calculates to about 70 kilometres to the horizon if sunset was happening behind us. So I'd be looking at, have we got that gap at 70 kilometres and beyond? And that would be the perfect recipe to allow the sun to set and underlight and catch that
Yeah,
cloud
and you
above
just
us.
get that amazing glow as well, don't you?
Exactly.
I love taking photos, and we'll put up a few examples of photos there, but yeah, I love taking photos like that. Tom's got a course out at the moment called Everything You Need to Know About the Weather to Take Amazing Photos. I've looked at it, it's pretty epic. I've learned lots from it. There's a link in the description below, and I think there's a discount at the moment, is there?
There is a discount through April, introductory offer, so sign up in April.
Yeah, and yeah, you'll be supporting Tom. It is really a very valuable, fully detailed weather course, so go and check it out.
So I'm back in the studio, and I just want to say that the 40% off on Tom's course actually lasts a little bit longer if you use the code Nigel Danson. So if you type that in at checkout, you get 40% off, and I definitely recommend it. Tom is a super expert, as you saw, about weather and how to predict weather for photographers. I'm just putting a page together for my Luscantire project, and I wanted to just say thanks for all the amazing comments that I've had on the last 3 videos. The series of films seemed to go down really well. It really was such a spectacular trip, and I'm going to be doing another video just sort of giving my thoughts on the trip afterwards. Now I've had a time to make the book and look at all the photos, so I will be doing that and talking about some of the editing things that I did as well. But I wanted to say thanks so much. I've also got these amazing illustrations from my friend Ali that are going to go in the book as well. They just look so good, so that's super exciting. And then finally, I just want to say thanks to this week's sponsor, which is Squarespace. I'm building this page. In fact, I've almost built it now, and you can see that it's been super easy to do with Squarespace. Building a gallery is just amazing. You've got so many different options on how you can lay things out. So at the moment, I've got the gallery set up, as you can see here. So it's laying the images out depending on the aspect ratio of them in like a grid form, which I think works really well for these images. So you can go and check that out. I'll put a link in the description for the 10% off Squarespace using the offer code Nigel. And yeah, thanks for Squarespace for sponsoring this week's video. And there's also a link to this page from Luscantire, so you can go and take a look at some of the other photos. I've also put some in that weren't in the videos as well. And finally, a lot of things to say in this. There are still an opportunity to get your name in the back of the book. I think I'm going to stop that at the end of this week. So if you haven't pre-ordered by then, it has to go to print then. So that'll be your last chance. Thanks ever so much for watching, and until next Sunday, bye.